Welcome to this episode of ICMA Education and Training presents Let's Talk Markets. My name is Georgina Jarratt. I'm the Head of Fintech and Digitalisation here at ICMA, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Armin Peter. I will allow him to introduce himself. Armin, a little bit about you, maybe your relationship with ICMA and how well you know us after all these years of working with us.
No, thank you very much, Georgina, for first of all having me. So Armin Peter, I'm a capital markets expert, and until very recently I was the global head of debt syndicate at UBS. Amongst that, I was as well leading the sustainable banking efforts in EMEA. And as you say, many years that I know you and that I know ICMA, but it's more than 25 years that I actually know capital markets. I started as a broker, became a trader, became a syndicate, I became an originator. I built business, trading desks and so on. So over the last more than 25 years, I've seen quite a lot. As you can imagine, from the Asian crisis to the Russian crisis to the financial markets crisis, Brexit, you name it. So I've seen a lot, but at all times I've been therefore very much involved in all the developments that were driving capital markets in the one hand, but on the other hand, more importantly, at times, even the infrastructure of capital markets.
Yeah.
So ICMA, you wouldn't believe, but goes back to the start of my career. In '97, I've done the General Certificate of ICMA back then. No, ICMA it was actually. Ever since, actually, I'm connected to ICMA. ICMA became ICMA back in 2005, and ICMA and ICMA actually were merging. So it's a long, long time.
Yeah, much longer than me. I'm a much more of a newbie. Maybe I'll catch up. So we're going to talk today about one of the topics that I know you are most passionate about, and indeed you have been an awesome sponsor of this for us for a very long time. Here at ICMA, I think over 7 years, something like that, since it all really started. But Fintech and Digitalisation is one of our cross-cutting themes here, the other being sustainable finance, and actually there's some nexus between the two, which we might touch on as well. It would be great to hear from you just in terms of the kind of general thematic of automation, digitalisation, innovation, or with capital letters at the beginning, what that means to you. You mentioned to me one very important statement, I think, made by a very well-known gentleman, but not maybe all the viewers will know who he is, but a gentleman called Larry Fink, and I thought maybe you might like to touch on why that spoke to you and, what you think of his comment.
Yeah, so Larry Fink, for those who don't know, is the founder and CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, 10 trillion under management. So when he says something, I think it counts quite a lot. Probably more when we say something. Yeah. But nevertheless, I think he summarized it very, very nicely back at COP 20 last year, in which he was saying he's forcing us or asking us actually to rethink the financial architecture. And he says it at a setting of COP, which is sustainability related. And I think everyone who's related to that market of late understands that people feel that the capital is not flowing in the right direction fast enough. He reiterated the same sentence in maybe slightly different words when he actually was launching the Bitcoin ETF and then started embracing tokenization. And therefore, he was saying we need to rethink the finance architecture. Personally, I feel we need to rethink the financial markets architecture at the same point in time. Yeah. Because when you change the narrative of how capital flow will flow, then you will most likely change the way how you deliver it as well. And I think this, as a capital markets guy, is just something so big that I have to be very fascinated. And out of that, I think, I feel we all need to be on this train from how things used to be and how they will be in the future. And technology is foundational in this. Just thinking about AI and what it does, ChatGPT, it's just revolutionary in that regard.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you start using some of those tools. We'll touch on AI actually as one of the thematics. And I think this is very aligned with the whole raison d'etre actually of the Fintech and Digitalisation team and function here at ICMA. important to mention that actually of our 620 or so members, the number changes every week, so I'll never get that quite right. A huge majority of them are already involved in our work, over 450 people, I think, across about 135 or so institutions in our various working groups and committees. Clearly that's not everybody, but actually if you look at all the different market participants that run the markets today and probably in the future, whilst their roles are changing, actually they're all interested in and or part of this journey of transformation and innovation. So I guess there's a reason that you're a huge sponsor of that, and you've been so helpful with us in terms of how that has evolved. But what do you feel, or maybe how have you seen the change in the roles of the trade associations, so ICMA in particular in this case, in the bond markets, around innovation, digitalisation, etc.? Because you and I have had some big conversations about that, where you've said, look, now's our time, this is why it's important, this is why we are now important. But could you just explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. You used a couple of words which I think are important. You've seen members growing.
Yeah.
You've seen engagement of 400 to number of people, right?
Yeah.
And this number
that
is
growing. This is too.
Correct. This is growing by the day, so to say. And I think this already reflects exactly of the question of where's the role of an ICMA? Growing is the answer. Because all what is happening and all what is summarized by Larry Fink in a single sentence means it's a systemic change. And when something is a systemic change, someone has to sort it out. And it's one of the reasons why, the members of ICMA, as you say, continue to grow, because it's recognized now outside. Someone has to sort it, and our members are expecting this. That is, ICMA takes the controlling function in this, leads it from the front, identifies the issues, asks the question, what does it mean for capital market? What does it mean for the people who are working in the capital markets? And we all know it's not a single person, it's not a single company. This is a wide ecosystem. So ICMA's role is central and growing.
Yeah, and actually you and I had an interesting discussion and debate this week about the word lead versus collaborate, coordinate, bring together. And I think you make a really important point there, which is actually there's another expression, which is very much an English expression about herding cats. So there isn't one party in this process and journey. I hate the word journey, but you know what I mean. It is a journey, actually, let's face it. There isn't one party who can get it to happen. There isn't one regulator. There isn't one community. There isn't one country. There isn't one player in the end-to-end trade life cycle that can actually make this innovation and transformation happen. So I suppose that's what we discuss about the fact that somebody at the centre needs to try and coordinate.
Correct.
And bring those cats together to move us all forward. Now, we had an interesting debate this week at another conference, actually, where we were asked to speak, myself and Gabriel Carlson, who isn't here today, but who works for me and has been working with you for a long time. And we were talking about the fact that actually some of the bigger sell-side institutions, where they have made large investments, in this case into the world of digital assets, which is one of our primary strategic topics, they are moving things forward. They are doing real transactions that are getting bigger and bigger in terms of the size of the issuances, the number of investors, etc., in this case in Hong Kong, and bringing other parties in, some of the clearing houses and so on, to increase that market connectivity. But where do you think we are in terms of that evolution? I mean, are we still in experimentation? You talk about sandboxes to scale. It's one of your mantras. So give us a bit of insight into that.
No, we've definitely played a lot and long enough, I think, in the sandbox here to prove the case, right? The benefits of transformation, the benefit of technology, what it can do, and all this, if you want to take benefit of this, then yes, at some point you need to go on scale. And I make the reference again to Larry. I think a person like him being at the top of the world's largest asset manager doesn't make a comment if he doesn't feel there's now scale to come. He is not a blue sky thinker in that regards, right? There has been a lot of sandbox activity, to use the word, before he makes a statement like this. This is such a big statement in some kind, but it gives an indication of where we are. We are on this turning point.
Yeah. And actually, again, at that breakfast briefing, that was exactly the point a colleague from HSBC was making about, we've built, we're trading, there are heads of digital assets springing up everywhere now. Yes. And that's a real change that I've seen even in the short time I've been with ICMA. So that means these institutions are hiring people to actually do the job all day, every day. I did have another conversation yesterday with another member about the fact that, yes, all great, but we need to make some money. So there's a little bit of a kind of pause in terms of what isn't yet working in the ecosystem. And I'm sure you as a syndicate guy recognise this, but
I think it all goes to the point when you ask, okay, at which point are we? We are at this edge. You have an old system, and Larry talks about a new system. Yeah. I completely believe in this, actually. But as we recognize there's a new system to go to, only then, when you know that there's a new system, you ask yourself the questions of how to get there.
Yeah.
And this means as well, goes back to the question earlier on okay, between collaboration and leading, I think if you are trying to lead a bunch of people or a herd of cats, you used it before, from the existing system to a new one, then you need to realize as well, as you're talking about the new system, you might conflict with those who are firmly still in their mindset in the old system.
Yeah.
And therefore, not everyone wants to be led.
Or wants to go.
Or wants to even go.
Yes.
And therefore it is a togetherness, right? So I don't like using the word leading, because it means someone is saying this is the direction. And that requires that actually everyone in this ecosystem that worked, it's not broken necessarily, but it will transform, has to lead you, and that's nearly impossible. So it's about the collaboration, but this is where the challenge is, and this is the challenge as well for an ICMA to orchestrate this dialogue, right? But you see it, 400 people already there, constantly growing, and it will grow because the realization that there is a different capital markets infrastructure, finance architecture, as Larry is saying, is slowly daunting on everyone. And then the questions get raised. Okay, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my company?
How does one educate themselves properly in what is a really complicated dance of transformation?
It is a complicated dance because, as I say, everyone has been specialized, and I would say everyone is very, very, very busy.
Yes.
And it's actually not a great feeling if you all of a sudden realize, oh, the world is changing around me, and you ask yourself, looking in the mirror, am I suitable? And the answer is, I don't know this, I don't know that, I don't know this.
Yeah.
It goes back, unfortunately, you have to make this time. You have to make this time. People talk about work-life balance. You need to have the right balance as well, mentally, to understand the right skills and things which you need to do to deploy your job as you do it today. But you need to set aside time to educate, to learn, to take on. That realization for me is the first step, to embrace change, not being scared. And I can tell you as well, once you do this, you're over the hump.
Yeah.
And then you have the time, and you will see how you actually relax more, because you start thinking, you become more suitable, sustainable. And we are talking later on about the intersection between tech and sustainable. This is sustainable you as a person. You joked a little bit about losing jobs and so on. Yes, if you are not embracing this mindset, then yes, there might be a day where you lose your job because the old system is shrinking and the new system is growing. And you don't want that, so embrace it. Join the track, so to say, right? And look where you can educate. Conferences are a perfect place.
Yeah,
a perfect place, because you get this holistic overview of experts sitting there from all across the ecosystem. You need to get out of your shell, out of your specialization, and open up.
Yeah,
I think that's what.
And I think what's interesting, and it was definitely what happened, for me when I came here. This was quite a different role for me, and it's quite scary actually when you throw yourself into something that you don't fully know. It's terribly comfortable to be where you know everything.
Oh, yes.
Much more comfortable.
Oh, yes.
But actually the growth that comes from what is actually a little bit scary at first is really quite invigorating. I say to people now, I love it. I love what we do.
I feel with you. I really feel with you, because that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, yes, I'm fascinated by transformation, and always my mind is, what challenge my job?
Yeah.
Technology was probably the first one who I thought would challenge me massively, right? Not only me, but then my team, and I feel responsible for my team. So, as a leader, and here I'm using the word, of a team, you need to be very conscious because it's you are accountable for your team. So you need to see these things coming. You embrace it, you then do it. This uncomfortable feeling has been when I, 10, 15 years ago, started focusing on technology, all these acronyms I didn't understand. Oh boy, if you're joining sustainable finance, for example, that is a very fast developing space, lots of acronyms. And yes, you've done your job for 10, 15 years, you lived in your comfort zone, all of a sudden you take something new on. You will have exactly those moments that you had. Right? You feel uncomfortable, but that's not bad, right? You're not alone. And for
doesn't feel very nice.
Correct. But and again, back to system change, it can't be done by a person. So don't think when you are, having a new job and come to a new company, it's all on you. It's not. You have people around. So this is about collaboration and orchestration, and human, because all these elements which I just mentioned. It's about human and personality.
Yeah, and so educating oneself, and I agree with you that the conferences are brilliant. I went to one yesterday. Yeah. We met some incredible people. I was like, I'm going to steal you, and you for our next event. So that was great. It's a great big load of people you haven't met before. You learn that actually the expertise is, as you rightly say, spread across lots of different people. And in particular, on two of the topics that I think we probably need to be actively orchestrating. We already are on one, and the other one is a little bit more nascent. DLT, digital bonds, digital assets, and AI. Yeah. Is it a two-horse race? How do they interplay? Is one going to go faster than the other? What are your views on those huge transformations that we're facing?
Both big.
Or involving. That's
true.
Both
big. Transformational. Yeah. No doubts about it. Don't panic are they coming together? Is it one to the other and so on? These are both foundational elements that you just need to keep the finger on the pulse, so to say. You need to have a good understanding of those topics. They will come all together, and they will be all both on different timelines. Yeah. Because in transition, because it's so many in the ecosystem, not everyone is at the same point in time. The result of what the transition and where we are, when you ask the question, where are we at this point, is a sum of where all the parts are together.
Correct.
Some are
very difficult to measure.
Some are much more further ahead of the curve. Some are behind. But to make an ecosystem newly work, it's about, the slowest in a certain way. So it will take its time. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges, right? This transformation of thinking capital markets today and capital markets tomorrow, when is it? Maybe that's one of the reasons why people are saying net zero needs to be 2050, right? Because you're not panicking about the first step and the second step and so on. You have time to think and then go on the journey. Yeah. So yes, foundational, they will all come together. They're interconnected without any doubt. But I don't stress out who is faster and so on. No. We can't.
No, and I agree with you. I think it was one of the first questions that Brian asked me when I joined ICMA was like, is it coming? Is it ever coming? They were talking about it yesterday, that it's been around. DLT itself has been around since 2017. I mean, AI has been around a lot longer than that. Yes. But actually, interesting, there's a really easy way to educate yourself on some of this stuff, and that ironically is using AI. So you mentioned ChatGPT. Yes. It's really good.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, even I know it only comes to a certain level of recent publications, but even the non-payable version of ChatGPT, if you just try it out, it's quite amazing what it can do. Absolutely amazing. I think the first time I used it, it was to write a blog, which I'd never written before, on mental health, and rather than starting from a blank sheet of paper, I just used it and was like, that is not bad.
No, exactly. So, and there are many other use cases, right? You presentations, you do. Think about, and you said it, right? AI is around since quite a while. Well, it's quite interesting, right? You get into your car, you have your Google map, and already the Google map tells you where you want to go and when you are there. So, subconsciously, it's been there for ages. But I think now it's to this level of awareness that it's scale. And I think exactly this, again, I go back to Larry, a guy like him doesn't make a
He
comment
gets a
like
lot of
this.
feature on our vlog.
He does,
doesn't he?
no, it's true. But I think it is a leading comment that makes people think about what's to come. Yeah? And I see this now as well in many organizations. The structural change has started to put this ability to scale in place. Because think about it, we talked about Sandbox. Sandbox is something separate. It's not integrated in your business.
It's
right?
segregated by design.
Now the question
actually
is about how to integrate this and scale it in your existing business. And that means as well, people who have played in the sandbox will integrate into the current business and become somewhat a hybrid. Because in my mind, if something is not broken, it will go through a hybrid in the first place.
Yeah,
right?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? And I think one that we haven't answered, and maybe we don't need to answer it actually, which is, will the digital world, fully automated, whatever that means, and that can mean a myriad of different things to different people, ever replace the traditional markets, or will it always run alongside, or doesn't it matter actually?
It doesn't matter,
no.
I would say, because that would immediately, so when is it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it causes panic in those who are, let's say, in the old world and those who are in the new world and so on. I don't think about these elements. What I do know is the direction.
Yeah.
And as I like to say, we are living in the world of 52-48, i.e. there's only a small minority, but it has tilted. And if you ask me when that happened, it was probably when COVID. It's systematic. And if we're talking about technology in capital markets, you can look anywhere and everywhere, political level, any, other topic, you will see, actually you have this systemic change anywhere and everywhere. And it leads to the point as well that people even say the economic model is changing because we are now taking sustainability or net zero commitments into our equation of what we do and how we do it. We've done it so far, we just produced, and the result was a GDP-driven outcome, money, very commercial. All of a sudden we're taking the planet and people into the equation of what we do. Well, this is a shift from an output economy to an impact economy. So if you change the economic model, capital markets will have to follow, because capital markets always reflected economic activity. So here we come.
So touching on that nexus then, since we've beautifully slid into that topic, what do you see as the most important interrelationship between the world of fintech digitalisation, automation of the industry, and the drive towards sustainability, and the role of sustainable finance in that? Where do you see that? Because you're massively passionate about both topics, and I know this vlog is about fintech digitalisation, but I think it's an important thing for us to discuss.
I think tech is the foundation, because tech is in the end then how you deliver the change of a narrative, the change of economy. So if we would say, because we decide, the planet is worthwhile something for all of us on the planet, and we take this into our consideration of economics thinking, and we just agreed on the fact that capital markets are reflecting economic activity, then it will automatically create the question of products and how to shift capital from one place to the other. If you change valuation models and the narrative, automatically capital markets will change. And when capital markets change, new products will be developed. You're not going to put new products on an old railway when you know that a new railway is more efficient, cost efficient, has more benefits. And just simply thinking about sustainable finance market and the increased request for data. Data is tech.
Yes. Or stored in tech for sure.
And sustainable finance is the way how to shift and finance capital for sustainable finance matters, right?
And where you have, and this is it's an early topic for us at the moment, but where you have a lot of data, that's also where the world of AI starts to become helpful. So I suspect there's a big
So data is the tech part who brings everything together. Data is actually then AI, because AI is just tapping into this pool of data. And data is a request in the sustainability world to do the right thing and measure the right things are happening. So you're preventing greenwashing and all these kind of things. So this trialogue, so to say, is why technology is underneath the foundation of how to deliver things in the future. Which is kind of the angle that we've been talking about, which is how does technology support the drive to sustainability?
is kind of the way
it's
we're looking
it's
at
an
it.
enabler.
Yes,
Absolutely an
and
enabler.
actually always is. And interestingly, again, that's a question around was DLT something that landed in financial services looking for a home? Because obviously it was actually quite mature in other industries, and then we've kind of gone, hang on, they're all using it, maybe we should use it, and now we've started to kind of work out where and how. And actually listening to some conversations around that, sometimes it does feel a little bit as if it's a solution looking for a business case. But what are your views on that? I mean, digital bonds is an incredibly important piece of strategic work for us. We're doing a lot of work on how we model them and how important that is in order to support the ecosystem and its evolution. But just some of your thoughts on digital bonds and what needs to happen to make that fly. We talk about it flying as a new asset class or an evolution to the old asset class.
I think it starts to fly because, again, if Larry Fink is saying, we need to rethink the finance architecture and embrace it at the same point in time, tokenization as a reflection of a change of an architecture, i.e. the infrastructure, how you deliver a product to his end client, then we in the capital market need to be prepared for the fact to deliver it in a technical, digital, tokenized way to those who are selling it on to their clients.
So what isn't working then? I mean, there's no real secondary market at the moment.
Yeah.
There's some issuances, and they're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And they're quite public.
Yep.
Some of them have very few investors. Some of them have a few more where they are partnering up with other organisations to increase the distribution. So, what's going to make it? What do you think the keys are to get that ecosystem properly running end to end?
You're absolutely right. There are only so many people who can play in the sandbox. Right?
Yeah.
So out of that. And we said it earlier on, we need to get out of the sandbox into scaling, integrate the sandboxes into conventional business.
Yeah.
How can you do this? Only when you're sure that there are standards that don't challenge the current system. Because the current system, over many, many decades, has established certain standards and principles. Those standards and principles are changing. So when we are shifting to a new infrastructure, it needs to be globally understood. What are those standards and principles? Goes back to the point when you asked earlier on, what is the role of ICMA? Here we are. It's not only ICMA, are other associations globally as well. And it goes back to, again, who is leading. No, it's not about who is leading of the associations one topic. No. It's a orchestrated collaboration because these are global standards which need to come. And what is missing, in parts of the infrastructure, the standards and principles are missing. Right?
Yes, I think
because
that's
when you go and identify the back to front process, most people only know probably they started at this, they understand now a little bit more, but it's not quite the entire back to front solution from giving birth to a new asset being bought by an end customer investor at BlackRock.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of the way it feels. So it feels like we are live, but we are at the beginning of the implementation of this new world,
Without any doubt, not all pieces are yet there.
No.
But everyone played in their sandboxes. Now you need to combine the sandboxes in a back to front solution. And frankly, those sandboxes in its fragmented way, they're all existing, Sean. So now you need a conductor who actually gets it together. But for hiring a conductor, you need to know what kind of music do you want in the end.
I'd love to know who that person is. Maybe it's a group of people. What's the role?
It will be 20 in a room yet again.
Yes, at least. Yeah. What's the role of the regulators in all of this? Where are they? Are they behind? Are they ahead? Are they playing? Are they? What changes have you seen?
I think they caught up quite well. Yeah, there were certainly days and months and years, where Bitcoin and crypto and so on was not understood whatsoever. Yeah, today very different. Yeah, and today regulators are starting to take a leading role. They understand now the end game. I think there's often a big difference between technology and sustainability. Sustainability, an end goal was agreed by politicians and clear.
Yep.
And then we started to figure out how to actually get there. Technology is different. Every day technology drives you to do something more efficient and better and bigger. So at some point, right, I mean, it goes like this. The one comes from the one direction, the other one from the other direction. And I think this in the middle, when both meet, is what Larry is actually talking about. This is the capital markets architecture of tomorrow. Yeah? So in that regards, they're really caught up. Nothing can be done without regulatory certainty.
Yep.
You need certainty. We are in the financial industry. No one will do anything if it's uncertain.
No, and it's something that we always talk about here, where we are absolutely driving innovation, driving, but in a safe and secure way that does not disrupt the stability and security of the markets.
Yes.
Legacy, if you want to use that, or traditional and future.
You're right. I think it's this part of our role then is, we don't drive the innovation in terms of a technology or anything else, but we understand early enough, and then we bring the right reality into the room, because we know there's a regulator that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
And anyone who is very innovative often hasn't dealt with a regulator. We need to bring them together, because only this is actually sustainable in some ways, and then therefore scalable and implementable. I
remember having a very personal experience with that at HSBC, where the cloud provider that was working with us said, you can visit the data centre twice a year. And I said, that's absolutely fascinating. If the regulators want to come in once a week, that's what's going to happen. And they had no concept of what it was like to work with the regulated entity. So you could see through that implementation of very well adopted 6,500 people on the platform technology, but this was their first and biggest financial services implementation. And it was just a whole new world of, whenever somebody goes like that, we have to just open the doors.
People haven't thought about this, and you can't blame them, because they were in an existing system with a job description that said, do this, do that. And all of a sudden, this is not the new system. So how are we doing it there? And then someone needs to tell the person, then this is holistic. You need to widen. You need to understand the back to front. And we joked a little bit about, who will be in this room. I think people who have this holistic understanding and actually made all the effort of learning, not 100% of each topic, 30% is enough.
Yeah. Now, I want to slightly pivot actually to an important achievement, a huge achievement that you were extremely instrumental in helping us to achieve around the issuance that the Hong Kong Monetary Authority made on the 7th of February this year, which was a digital green bond. That was great, ticked two very important boxes that we've already touched on, but it also adopted our bond data taxonomy, so one of the standards and models that we've been working on for a very long time, with a lot of cat herding to achieve the outcome. So it would be great if you could just give your thoughts on how that happened, but also a little bit about the bond data taxonomy and why and how that was is so instrumental, because it's quite early in its adoption, and we're doing a lot of work to promote the adoption of these kind of standards and models. It's not mandated. But just some thoughts on that would be amazing. No,
certainly. The bond data taxonomy, it's been work of years. One can say. Gabriel and myself can very well remember those early days of bringing it forward with the same narrative as we would say today. If you want to digitalize something on scale, you need standards. The market needs standards. If you have no standards, no scale, no trust. And out of that, actually, it was relatively simple. If we start doing digital bonds, we need to all talk about the same data. As much AI works, of the same pool of information, like a bond transaction has to do this going forward. So it took a while. Came out in February 2023, as you say, and latest adopted by HKMA. Because not in the first transaction, they've always been a leader in capital markets transaction. They've done digital and green digital before, but this time, I simply brought it actually to the HKMA and say, made them aware of the work of ICMA and what the benefits are and why we are doing this. And it's without any doubt that they understood the benefits. They understood the benefits that market standardization, digitalization, and anything starts at the birthplace. And this is when you issue a new asset. And so
that was a huge achievement for us. And I think very much thank you, actually, because you had a lot of bilateral in-person conversations in Hong Kong, and they're a huge SSA issuer. So once that goes up in lights in the press releases and things, that's really helpful for us, because people start saying, what's that? Should we be using it? How do you use it, etc. So, and it's different when we go back to the sort of small technology firms, where they're using it and adopting it, that's great, the sort of innovative fintech firms. But when an SSA issuer adopts it, you're like, oh, this is great, because it starts to make people ask the questions. And it kind of goes back to the self-drive for education, doesn't it? What is that? Let me go and find out. Be inquisitive. Go and look things up.
Again, you can't expect everyone knows everything.
No.
So you need to bring it to these people. And it goes back to the point as well. Once the top is talking about something, the rest will listen, right?
Yeah.
If the world's largest asset manager is talking about something, people start thinking. If an HKMA is doing something as a sovereign, then others start to think and listen. So
exactly, and it helps us, right? We can't ask for more from a marketing and PR perspective. Just on talking a little bit about Asia, actually, we've made some great strides in working with the regulators in Asia, in both Hong Kong and Singapore. Yeah. So with the MAS in Singapore. We're working with them on some digital bond standard work. Yeah. Not just them. They have a project called Project Guardian, which I know you're aware of, and we are part of that, but we are also running a lot of our own internal working groups with Gabriel is, when I say we, Gabriel is, with all of our different constituencies of ICMA's membership. How important is the sort of pivot to other regions? We want to go, for example, and start making more of a splash in the Middle East as well. But what are your views on that? I mean, obviously in Asia we're doing quite well, both on the BDT and the digital bond models. But what are your views on that in terms of global expansion and the importance?
Today we are not talking about capital markets in a particular region. When we say the word capital markets, everyone immediately thinks about the world, and that's what it is. So it's a global topic. And therefore global engagement is required. So if it's Asia or Singapore and Hong Kong in the first place who engage, then I would say all the other countries in the world engage with ICMA on this topic too. Because again, for the benefit of scale and interoperability between countries, cross-border business and so on, finance is global. And can't be stopped at the border, should not be stopped at the border. And out of that, we need to take care that, again, these standards and principles become global standards and principles. To the point, it's not only down to an ICMA, it's to other associations as well, again, to come together at the table and make those decisions on standards and principles, because only that gives everyone underneath of our members, the members of other associations, the certainty they're doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah. Just whilst we're on standards and models, so obviously the other big model or sort of automated end-to-end process model that we built was the common domain model. We joined that party a little bit later than our colleagues at ISDA, who kind of started this journey quite a few years before us. Again, I think fair to say we're in the early stages of adoption and implementation of that model. I get calls from members saying, I hear everyone's adopting the CDM. Should we be adopting the CDM? And I kind of say to them, well, potentially, I can't tell you what your use case is, but should you be looking at it? Should you be educating, overusing that word, yourself about what it is and why you might need it and where you might need it? Without doubt, the answer to that is yes. But a little bit of the history of the CDM and kind of what you see its role is in terms of, evolving and transforming the marketplace.
So it's a good thing, right? Because beforehand we talked about, mushrooms popping up and everyone in their own sandbox and just needs to be aligned. And do I need to be leader or second? What is good? I think it's for me a good reflection that things have been happening elsewhere, not only at ICMA. And there are things happening at other associations at the same point in time, but we need to knit them together. And ISTA, frankly, is the same principle, right? Define data standards and then define a process to run with these standards, right? And implement this in the derivative world in the first place, but we teamed up then on repo. And so, I often take the narratives like a snowball. You start.
We haven't had that one yet.
Exactly. you start on one point, but you agree on a common denominator, and then you start rolling it, and others are touching on. And it's great you get these calls from your members. Yeah, should we be in? Should be implemented? I think it's already a reflection of there's a bit of a FOMO going on, right? So that's good, and it gives you this kind of sense of maturity. Yeah, all goes back to where are we in this stage? I think we are in this FOMO, get out of the sandbox, into scale. What does it need? What do I require? Sentiment. Yeah. So it's a beautiful. It's a beautiful question to get asked. Yeah.
I'm glad about that. And you got your snowball analogy.
Absolutely. Lots of energy.
We haven't heard that one for a while. That one's been asleep. We've got some new analogies now. We've talked a lot in this conversation about people educating themselves and learning and just going and finding out and being inquisitive. So we run an annual flagship event at ICMA. The next one is coming up in mid-September, and I believe this vlog will be released just before that. That's obviously a very important place in which we educate people. We have panels, we have keynote speakers, we have, hopefully in this case, some sort of workshopping that we will do around the tables. ICMA also obviously runs education courses too, and with a completely unapologetic plug, we do actually have 2 education courses that are specific to Fintech Digitalisation and another few that are in the pipeline, particularly around AI, which we will be announcing at Point Zero this year. But the role of courses, I suppose, is what in your view? So we've talked about the working groups, we've talked about having people on large meetings, listening in, that's all fine, coming to events, educating yourself, using ChatGPT, lots of different ways you can educate yourself. How does the role of education courses work? Because it is something that we provide, and they are amazing, these courses, but how does that work? Maybe thinking back to your time at UBS about when, and you said you did that as the first engagement with ICMA.
I think I would say education is somewhat the key, right, to a door that you want to unlock to go through to the other side, right? Because in the room where you are, something is changing, and in the other room is probably where the party is going to be tomorrow, right? So you need a key, and I think that's again education, in my way or in my sense. You talked about conferences. If conferences is the holistic way of getting a broad overview, and you get at least a good picture, an understanding of the narrative, you then go one level lower. And this is what the education modules are. And this is what the education modules of ICMA are surfing for. You can go lay deeper and deeper, depending on how important it is for your job. Yeah. Right? And this is where, you start holistic, and you become very specific depending on your role and what it means. And then this is what we are structurally at ICMA now going through of, okay, whom do we want to cater at which given point in time? Yeah, because it all comes together. It's again like puzzle playing, to then later on being educated on the bigger picture. It really depends who you are, what you do, how deep therefore you need to go. But for that is what we like to cater. Yeah.
So the 2 courses that we currently have in our portfolio that will undoubtedly be expanding, because I'm a massive fan of education full stop, is Fintech in the capital markets with a spotlight on primary. Interesting because things are very active in the space of the primary world, which probably hasn't innovated so much, and I think there's probably a lot more to come. And then the second one is a course on digital assets, which is one of these hot topics that, to our very long discussion today, is something important that we probably all need to learn about if we're interested in being in this industry in the future. But, thinking back to that first course that you did, how important was it, do you think, to sort of change the way you thought or the way you understood what you were doing, or was it just clarifying of what you already knew? Can you remember that far back?
I do. I vividly remember it.
Do you?
Yeah, I do vividly remember it, because I was a greenhorn coming from a small retail bank in Germany called Ettling, Volksbank Ettling, and came to Frankfurt and became a broker. And I was doing this thing, selling bonds. It's like real estate from left to right, but actually it was an item. I didn't understand the ecosystem. So
what am I selling?
Frankly, it's like you look at a car, but you don't know how to drive it. But you know how to sell it. Someone comes and buys it, and that's it. So in this case, I wanted to understand how does the traffic work, right? And therefore, it's a driving license. That's how I saw it. Plus, you have it on your business card, and it gives you the credit of knowing. If you really know, don't know, but you have it on your credit card or on your business card, right? Explaining telling everyone out there, I know this. I know this, and I think
it's a badge.
It's like a badge. You're absolutely saying it right. Yeah. And I think this is important in a world where people will look for the talent. Who does know what? Yeah. So very important. And wearing that badge, means you're credible in what you do and people can trust you. It's good.
Yeah, and I guess you feel more confident talking about it too, because actually ultimately that's an important thing. It's quite an important thing to be able to talk.
I've done my batches in the sustainability space, right? Impact investing and so on, right? Yes, you go out and collect your batches.
Like being a good brownie.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know whether you have brownies, but anyway. So look, I mean, I think we've touched on a huge number of subjects, Armin, and I'm very, very grateful to you for spending time talking to me. I know we spend a lot of time talking to each other anyway, but is there anything you feel we haven't touched on in terms of how this world is going to move from today to tomorrow to the day after tomorrow? Or do you think, we've touched on most of the important topics that are sweeping through the industry at the moment?
No, I think we talked a lot. I think we combined. Hopefully, it comes across in a way that people understand what it's after. Yeah. Don't be shy. Embrace and
get involved.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody's welcome.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
I hate that expression, but you're right. It is absolutely a journey. It's just. It's a long journey, but I think it's a very interesting and exciting one. And actually, the industry is rife for transformation and innovation. We just have to do it safely, securely, and from a stable footing.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for joining the vlog today.
Well, thanks for having me.